is brought to you by Pay Global.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Africa with me, Jones Sewa. Just before we went on the break, we were talking to Idris Adishina, who's the editor of Alternative Africa. Just to let you know, today our main topic, we're talking about mental health issue. The stigmatization on mental health issues when it comes to the African settings. A lot of people, including myself, it's only recently that I was educated on mental health. So, stay tuned. Make sure to send in your comments, your thoughts. We'll be joined by two wonderful guests, Dr. Emma Madi and also Jillian Asafu Eje. The both of them will be joining us very, very soon. Let's continue with our stories making the headlines across the continent. As I said before, we had Idris Adishina on the line. Idris, let's look at another story that has been reported. This is to do with Sani Abacha. Apparently, Switzerland is to return $320 million back to Nigeria.
Yeah, that's I don't know whether they call it a good news or a mixed news, because this money is being with Swiss bank. It's been frozen since 2014, and 2014 to now is 3 good years. Yes, let's have the money. Let's use the money. But what really upsets me there is the condition that the spending of the money has to be supervised as a condition for release the money by the World Bank. That's upsetting. How can you take custody of our money and still tell us how to spend the money before you release it? How can that be a condition for releasing the money? That it has to be monitored by the World Bank to make sure that it's used for Nigerian people. Who is the Nigerian people? How do you determine Nigerian people? How do you tell me how to spend my money? After taking custody of my money for so long years, since between 1993 to 1998, for so long years, why are you giving me a condition on how to spend my money? But I agree that that's not the topic of the day. What's on ground with you is that the money is coming back to Nigeria. So good news. Let it come to Nigeria and let it come to government. Let the government spend the money. But at least let the government. And that tells you what exactly is wrong with Africa. That money has been in the bank now for quite a long time. Yeah. That's like one of the largest money repatriated to Nigeria so far.
Yeah.
If it happens anyway.
If it happens. You have doubts.
If it happens.
You have doubts that it might not happen.
If it happens. It might not happen because when somebody gives you a condition that the World Bank has to supervise it, give you so much barriers. The agreement has been done since 2014. Now 3 years after, we are still talking of conditions to spend the money. It might not happen. If it happens, for me, it's a good news. Nigeria is in need of every penny stolen away from that. And don't mind you, that is a fraction of the money stolen so far.
Yeah.
That is a fraction of the money. So if $240 billion is a fraction of the money, you see how much Africa has been bled. Only God knows why that continent is still surviving. But the good news here is that money is about to come after 3 years.
Okay.
The year is running to an end. Let them fast track it and let it come back to Nigeria.
Okay. Idris, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you for talking to us. Thank you. That was Idris Adishina, who's the editor of Alternative Africa. We spoke to with regards to stories making the headlines across the continent. Just to let you know, we are live on Sky Channel 291 on GNTV. We're also streaming live on GNTV UK on Facebook. You can go onto our Facebook page and also Talk Africa. Or you can also go on our Twitter page, Talk Africa UK, and use the hashtag Talk Africa UK. If you want to call into the studio, it's 0203-286-0185. 0203-286-0185. Now then, a person's condition with regard to their physiological and emotional well-being. A person's condition with regards to, psychological and emotional well-being. 1 in 4 adults will experience mental illness at some point each year in the UK. This ranges from anxiety, depression to alcohol dependence, substance misuses, and psychosis. As I said earlier, 75% of mental illness starts before a child reaches their 18th birthday, while 50% of mental health problems in adult life take root before the age of 15. If we look across Africa, anybody deemed to have any form of mental issue is treated as a second-class citizen. So today we are talking about the stigmatization of mental health in the diaspora and across Africa. And joining us this morning to discuss this issue, we have Dr. Emma Madi, who's a psychologist and also has a from the background of mental health. And also Gillian Asafu AJ, founder of Ekuya Hazel. Gillian has also got an event coming up called Africa on the Rise on Mental Health. Good morning to the both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please come a bit closer to your microphone for me, Maddie. Just speaking to the mic so people can hear you.
Good morning.
Nice, I can hear you. Okay. So now, if we talk about mental health issue, before I come to you, Gillian, I'll come to you first, Doctor. What are we looking at here?
Mental health. Mental health basically is how people behave mentally. Normally, you're supposed to be able to face the day-to-day running of your life and the challenges without behaving in an extreme fashion. For instance, if there's a conflict, you need to be able to resolve that conflict without resorting to anything extreme. And if you're having financial difficulty, you should be able to manage it without making it overburden you. If you have any relationship difficulties with people, you're supposed to be able to manage it without it getting out of hand. And these are the normal affairs of human beings. It's when these kind of become extreme so that people overreact and are not able to cope with all these challenges and difficulties, which then affects their behavior in a certain fashion that other people see them as different from themselves. Then that becomes a problem, that becomes an issue, and that's what then begins the stigma that we're about to talk about.
Okay, now, Gillian, you've got an event coming up tomorrow called Africa on the Rise on Mental Health. First and foremost, why Africa on the Rise on Mental Health? Is there something that you've witnessed here in the UK?
So the company obviously spoke about Ekuya Hazel. I've been running that for 3 years now, and literally in 1 week is our 3-year anniversary of us being running. So our flagship event that we always do is called Africa on the Rise, and it's this year in particular that we've actually, from feedback from our previous events, we've decided to do a topic-specific Africa on the Rise. So usually we would talk about governance, politics, healthcare, we talk about globalization, a lot of things within the Africa on the Rise event. And this time we actually decided that we're going to do Africa on the Rise specifically focused on mental health. So when I was just in Ghana recently as well, I saw an alarming amount of people just walking around the streets naked. And I was always just wondering, what is really going on? And obviously that's when I started to think that we have a stigma of mental health here in the Black community, but then the stigma of mental health that we're talking about in Africa transcends a lot, and people are being expelled from their families. People can't seek medical advice because it's better. People think that prayer alone can actually get you there. So it's just, that's why we decided to specifically focus in.
All right. Well, yesterday we spoke to a few people about what we're discussing here, the stigmatization of mental health. Let's listen to what they had to say.
I think there's a big stigma of being crazy or being, a family member or someone, friend, finding out that you have mental issues. And instead of getting it resolved, you kind of just avoid it. It's just like someone going to the hospital. Oh yeah, I can get rid of this cold or this flu. I don't need to go for a checkup. I'm fine. So, and then it just progresses and gets worse. And then before you know, it's a fire that can't be controlled.
I think there might be a stigma attached to it. It's very hard to understand if you're suffering from it. Normally, if you have a cold, you need to go to a doctor. If your leg's broken, you need to go to a hospital. How do you know if you need to go to a mental health or get mental health evaluation? And sometimes, you feel like, it could be an embarrassment. You don't want people to know that you're suffering from something. So I think those might be the main concerns within the community. You've got people that aren't, when you have a mental health, people think that you're not functioning well. We're in South London, and I grew up in a time when Maudsley Hospital was considered a mental hospital, and you didn't really want to know anybody that went there. It's not the thing to be, seen, or I don't know. I just don't think generally people want to admit that they have a problem. Most people don't, let alone a mental one. It might be easier to see if you're suffering from finances because you can't pay your bills, but a mental one, it suggests sometimes that you might be mad, or anyone can have a mental problem, I believe. It could be a work trigger, a family trigger, a death in the family. We're all wired differently, so anyone is susceptible to this condition, and so I don't think people should feel that it's making you any less of a human if you genuinely suffer from a mental health condition.
I think the main reason is that the society doesn't allow weaknesses in general, and so we all have to be strong and secure of ourselves, and that is considered something that is not good, and it's basically your fault if you're not like that.
A lot of problems possibly with the environment, where we're possibly not in our environment, and a lot of issues stem from maybe finding work, a lot of pressures on the workforce, and in the family unit also, possibly have a lot of fathers are not being around their children, and the mother has a lot of pressure on her. So I think there's a lot of struggle in the community in a whole, I think. Most importantly, if you do find a friend or family member that has issues, try and encourage them as most positively as possible to try and get some help. And then if you can just even help them on that process and I think people don't want to be told what to do, but they want to be advised. What's the best way to go about this? How can we progress ourselves as a family unit? So just give them a helping hand, really.
Welcome back. Yesterday we spoke to a few people and they shared their thoughts on this subject. Dr. Mahdi, as I said earlier on, myself included, it was just recently I was educated on mental health because within the African settings we've been brought up to be a man. You're not supposed to show your emotions. If you're going through stuff, you more or less keep it to yourself and you deal with it yourself.
But that's a cultural thing, isn't it? Or is it worldwide? Because I believe now things are changing here in Britain. Men in particular, are beginning to think that they don't have to be macho anymore. They can now express their feelings. So I'm not sure if it's still the case here, but I do know that it's probably the case in Africa as a whole. And somebody was saying that, anyone can have mental health problems. Mental health problems are more common than we think. It's everywhere with everyone all over. I was looking through the statistics yesterday, and it says that this is the Global Mental Health Foundation, the UK Mental Health Foundation, and 450 million people around the world have a mental health problem at any given time. And there's 1 in 10 children experience mental health problems, and 1 in 4, as you said earlier on, experience mental health problem. And depression affects 1 in 12 people all over the world. So it's with us. It's part and parcel of us. There's no getting away from it. But it's the way we go about managing it. Everyone has a mental health problem at any given time, at some point in their lives. It's how we manage it. It's how we react to the issues that are involved. It's how we perceive what those issues are and what we think can be done about it. When you talk about alarming numbers of people exposing themselves in Ghana, those are the ones that have kind of succumb to the pressures and are demonstrating the stresses that they're going through, which you can see visibly. But I have been in Ghana for the past 10 years, going and coming, and I can tell you that there are people who haven't got their clothes off. They're still in their normal attire and walking around, and are more disturbed than the ones that you saw with their clothes off. So it's really
Okay.
terrible. In
All right.
Ghana.
We're taking a break. When we come back, we'll definitely touch upon that. This is John Sawai. You're listening and watching Talk Africa on GNTV and also on GN Radio. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by Pay Global.
E-News Redefined. Wondering what's going on in the life of your favorite entertainment personality? Wonder no more, because the Daily Setbit has got you covered with the latest in entertainment news, gossip, facts, rumors, and of course, some sizzling interviews.
Not just that, did you know actor Jimmy Fox's real name is Eric Malone Bishop? I bet you didn't know. On the Did You Know segment, we bring you some mind-boggling facts you might not know about your favorite celebrity.
We don't only set the trend with our stories, we bring you trending videos and images that have gone viral on social media. Your entertainment just got better.
Majority of you only pay attention to us after years of unremittent persistence and rejections, whilst we challenge the way it has always been done. We have made courageous decisions many of you wouldn't dare dream, forgetting you can live it when you dream it. Wake up with an idea. Research the egg out of the idea. Write a massive business plan. Raise money and create business. Wave goodbye to friends and families as your life is now your business. Stick with it, even on the bad days. Following your massive expansion into a worldwide domination, retire to your favorite highland or go back to step one and wash, rinse and repeat.
The CEO's Chair, showing on GNTV UK.
You might ask an artist to explain his art, or ask a poet to explain his poem, but it defeats the purpose. The meaning is only clear through the search. Painting is the silence of thought, the music of sight. Painting is just another way of keeping a diary. If we could say it in words, there'll be no reason to paint.
This program is brought to you by Pay Global.
Welcome back to Talk Africa with me, John Zewa. Today we're talking about stigmatization of mental health within the African setting. Today in the studio we have Dr. Emma Madi, who is a psychologist, also has mental health practitioner. Also Gillian Asafu AJ, founder of Equia Hazel. If you just join us again, we are live on Sky Channel 291 on GNTV, also on Facebook we're streaming live, GNTV UK, and on Talk Africa. You can go onto our page there if you want to send any comments into on this discussion. If you want to call into the studio, it's 0203 286 0185, 0203 286 0185. Now, Gillian, you were talking about when you went to Ghana and then the people that you saw.
Yeah.
At any given moment, did you try to speak to these people?
No.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I went to an event last week, and the thing is, when we're talking about the idea of like mental health awareness and becoming more aware of it, etc., it doesn't mean that you should now approach someone and talk to them because you're not clinically trained. You can't actually like integrate into these situations. It's not your place to do that, especially because if you don't know how to talk to these people and they're going through an episode and you've now addressed them and said, hey, are you okay, and they're hearing something else and they lash out and something goes wrong, then it's just like you put yourself in a situation that you weren't actually prepared to deal with. And just like as we were hearing before about everyone having like a mental health episode at a time, I think even if we don't think about the word episode, everyone has a mental health the same way we have a physical health, and sometimes your mental health will suffer the same way your physical health can suffer. And people, you can see them going to anorexia, obesity, or just having general like heart conditions and stuff like that. So we all need to be aware, especially sometimes your mental health and physical health can be linked, especially with girls when you have like body shaming from being on social media and stuff like that. So we all have different types of mental health, and you just have to know the same way that you couldn't coach someone out of obesity, you couldn't do the same for someone who's actually going through like schizophrenia or something. You're not trained, and you could actually just make the situation worse.
Mandy, that's extreme, as you spoke or you touched on earlier. With regards to somebody who has mental health, how do you spot somebody with mental health? You know, somebody that's not out there, you know, like Gillian said she saw when she went to Ghana. You also touched on people who are well-dressed. How do you spot?
You have to be trained, like she said earlier on. You have to be trained, because when you're training, you're taken through how to recognize symptoms, how to identify symptoms, how to diagnose them, and then how to get them treated and managed. So you have to have some knowledge about mental health. And this is why it's important that in Africa, we all become aware of mental health, like it is here in the UK. The knowledge is not in Africa, and that's what kind of sets us apart and makes like a little bit difficult for us, because majority of the public are totally oblivious of what mental health is, and therefore they are not even aware if someone standing next to them has a mental health problem. They can only see it if the person begins to take their clothes off. But the one that is wearing his clothes, who is even more dangerous than the one with the clothes off, nobody knows about. So yes, you have to be trained to be able to spot these things. And if even without training, if you've kind of worked as in health, mental health units, or being involved with people with mental health problems like your company is, in time you then become aware of what to be looking for and be able to spot, because then you've been doing it over the years and you've gained the experience and some of the skills.
I understand you need to be trained, but for instance, if your brother, sister, your sibling, family member,
you can always tell when somebody is behaving differently from what they were before.
Okay.
For instance, if your brother or sister is now suddenly becoming very angry all the time, or fighting all the time, picking fights all the time, refusing to eat all the time, not able to sleep, and staying up all night and saying things that life is not worth living, and everything is hopeless, and picking fault, you can tell that there is an issue, that this is not the brother or the sister that I knew before. Something is happening.
Is that not considered as the norm? As a human being, at some point in your life, you get angry.
You get
people say it was just a bad day.
No, you get angry, but not continuously.
Okay.
It has to go on for a period of time, and kind of consistently all of the time, because we normally you don't get angry all the time 24/7, or you're not always in a really bad mood and picking faults at people all of the time. So it's when something happens that you realize that no, this is different, because your own brother and your sister, you know them, you've been interacting with them since childbirth, hopefully, and you know what their behaviors are like. So when there's a change in the behavior, obviously you'll be able to pick it up. So a member of family or a close friend will be able to tell that something is not quite right.
Okay, and Gillian, you touched on social media. You're very active on social media, and social media has been linked to mental health. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you've seen, especially when it comes to the way people portray themselves on social media, or they've been bullied on social media?
So just to say, so tomorrow for the event that's happening at the Africa Centre, we are going to touch on a number of topics like mental health and faith, mental health and cannabis, mental health and social media. So in answer to your question, one of the things I feel like I've really noticed about social media is the fact that you're kind of seeing a perfect life. And if I can just speak from like a woman's perspective, when you see all these people who are kind of going to the gym, who are living in big houses, who have relationships that are thought to be idolized, when you see stuff like that, people often just get immersed in other people's lives. And yesterday I even made a post on social media, because I think I'd seen a lot of people sharing this petition about signing the petition to pressure the UK government to put pressure on the Libyan government. And I was just like, while you people were watching reality TV programs and you were so involved in YouTube, did you know that Libya doesn't have a government? Like, they killed Libya's leader and they don't have a government. So it's just like, now everyone feels like they're standing up for a social cause and everyone's signing this petition. But it's just like, there is an African Union. Why would you want the Western influence in an African country? Because that's the same as colonialism, and we know it didn't work. So it's just like, now everyone feels like, oh, we're doing the right thing. And it's like this movement of, oh, everyone's woke. But it's like, you guys, you're kind of doing more harm than good, because it's literally like, now we look back on it and we say there was really no need for like the USA or the UK to invade Iraq, and you literally are saying you want them to do the same thing in Libya because this is the only way to make it better. So yeah, that's what I've seen.
Okay, now Gillian touched on something which I was going to talk about with regards to faith. Many times we do see this within the African settings, not just in churches and mosques as well. Why is it that, especially Africans, when somebody is not well, we have this barrier that it stops us from seeking medical help? Rather, we're quick to seek for help from a religious leader.
That's where stigma sets in. When people perceive somebody as being different from the norm, or even, because stigma comes in two folds. First of all, there's social stigma, where the public sees the person, the individual, as different from the normal, and then the person themselves, there's also this self-stigma, or the perceived stigma, where the person themselves see themselves as being different from others, and therefore will internalize things inside them, and that will stop them from going out and mixing with people, and then they exclude themselves. So when these things happen, then people become embarrassed and ashamed, and they think that because they are different, that nobody would want to have anything to do with them. And so rather than admit that there is a mental health problem and seek professional help, they would rather go to churches and go to the prayer camps and all these new pastors that are rising up in Africa to get help from them. And these people are just after your money. They don't have the help that you're looking after, you're seeking. So they just want to take your money, and therefore it becomes a bigger problem, because the person you're looking on to help you with your mental health problem may even have a bigger mental health problem than yourself. You don't know. And also sometimes, in Africa, these things are always attributed to demons and the bad things that your family did in the past, which is catching up with you, a bit like the karma in this country. And so people see that, if they admit to being mentally ill, then they'll be seen as demonic, or they'll be seen as their families having committed some big offense in the past that is catching up with them. And so they would rather be seen in the churches seeking help than with a psychiatrist asking for treatment, because it's much more acceptable and fashionable to be going to church and to be seen with a pastor, and you can actually talk about seeing your pastor than talk about a psychiatrist. Because if you were to admit that you have a mental illness, for instance, then everyone begins to shun your company, because it does affect yourself, it affects your family. Other families may refuse to get their wards to marry into your family because of the prevalence of mental illness in your family. And therefore, all these things come to play when people are thinking about admitting to having a mental illness. And this is what this is the underlying root of stigma, because of all these things that we are trying to avoid, the things that we don't want us to be seen as, being party to, because it affects us and affects our wider family.
So I want to say, so this is again just like so tomorrow we will have case studies. It's not just like sitting there and talking about random things we want to talk about. Like, we've done a lot of research into this event that we're putting on and actually have case studies. And one thing that I'll just add that you will hear tomorrow is that they have seen that 48% of evangelical Christians believe that people can overcome a serious mental illness, through Bible study and prayer alone. So this was a study conducted in 2013. And the thing about that is, when it comes down to faith like that, especially because sometimes people often blur the lines between faith and culture. Because if you read the Bible, it does talk about, be anxious for nothing, put everything onto God. And obviously anxiety, these kind of things tie into mental health. So if these weren't real things, then the Bible would never speak about them, because it even says these things, they happen to people. And there's people who are in this world who are gifted, because not all of us can go to medical school. It's a long time.
Yeah.
People in this world are gifted. God has allowed them to be able to go through that training, allow these pharmaceutical companies to have people like that who actually are taking time to establish these illnesses, to do phase 1, phase 2 testing to make sure that we are having the best drugs put out there for people who have different illnesses. So it's you shouldn't think that, if you seek help to get to speak to a psychiatrist, if you should seek help to speak to a mental health person, that it's weakness or it's going against your faith, because the person you're speaking to, they also might be a Christian, they might be a Muslim, and they're using their gifts to help you, and it's just through the medium of medication or through the medium of seeking medical help. So I think...
So what you've touched on the fact that anxiety is linked with mental health.
Yeah.
So then, as a believer, somebody who's a Christian, how do you then differentiate, if you're feeling anxiety, where the Bible says that, give everything to the Lord, and that's to going to seek for medical help? I
think if you're praying about something, imagine if you're anxious, profusely anxious every single day, and you are praying God help me, God help me. If you get that spirit of discernment within you, where you're do you know what, I actually know someone who works in mental health, maybe I should speak to them. So it's just not saying that now you're praying, so that's the only thing you can do. If you're praying, you have to listen as well. You're asking, so also open your ears and open your heart to listen. And you shouldn't harden yourself so much that even if God's telling you, listen, book a GP appointment, go and see your GP, go and be referred, etc., that you shouldn't listen. So that's why I feel people get the lines blurred between faith and culture, because it's your culture that's telling you, like you were saying, that it would be better to just speak to your pastor. It would be better to just, speak to people within your family. So, yeah.
Wow.
Let me say, anxiety is a part and parcel of our lives.
Yeah.
In when you have exams, you feel anxious about it. When you're going to have some kind of investigation into your health, you become anxious about it. So it's part and parcel of our human life, and it's normal. It's only when it becomes extreme and it's kind of interfering with your normal day-to-day behavior and day-to-day living that it becomes an issue. And so when anxiety becomes a problem, that's when you need to seek help.
How can you tell that it's become a problem? Because as you said, it's part and parcel.
When you're going to have exams, you feel anxious, you know, you're sweating, you're thirsty, you're using the toilet half a dozen times whilst you're waiting. Yeah. As soon as you finish the exams, all those symptoms stop. But when you're anxious all the time, always rushing to the loo, always sweating, always feeling thirsty, always feeling on edge, having to do things and rushing around and, doing a lot of shopping. Some people spend money they haven't got. Yeah. That's extreme.
Okay. Yeah. We'll be back very soon. Don't worry, I'll give you more time to talk, Gillian. This is Talk Africa with me, John Zerua. We're taking a quick break. We'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by Pay Global.
Do you know where we are?
And waking up every morning like it's just another day.
We can try again. You have to fight.
I have fought.
Don't walk away whilst I'm still talking to you.
Beloved, God created man with the dust of the earth. God breathed the breath of life into mankind, so man became a living soul. It is therefore empirical to know and to understand that the earthly cannot survive without the heavenly. Faith today is designed to bring men and women of God from across the world to discuss developmental issues and current affairs backed by the scriptures and the gospels. This will enable us to have a better Ghana and a better world to live in. My name is Apostle Owahin Omaria Champon. I'm going to be your regular host. Remember, the light of God will shine. Don't miss it.
You might ask an artist to explain his art, or ask a poet to explain his poem, but it defeats the purpose. The meaning is only clear through the search. Painting is the silence of thought, the music of sight. Painting is just another way of keeping a diary. If you could say it in words, there'll be no reason to paint.
This program is brought to you by Pay Global.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Africa with me, Jones Sewa. If you just joined us, a very good morning to you. Today we're talking about the stigmatization of mental health within Africa. In the studio we have Dr. Emma Madi and also Gillian Safo AJ. Just to let you know, we are streaming live on Facebook. We're also live on Sky Channel 291, GNTV. Go onto our Facebook page, GNTV UK, and also Talk Africa, our page on Facebook. If you want to call into the studio, it's 0203-286-0185. 0203-286-0185. We'd like to hear your thoughts and comments on this subject, because this is a subject that is not really discussed within the African settings, but is very, very important, very, very crucial. Now, before we went on the break, Doctor, we were talking about how faith or religion deals with mental health, because we are accustomed to going to pastors to seek for help whenever we're going through such problems. But in a case where somebody who suffers from mental health issues and not able to seek help, and medical help, and then they go to the pastor prays for them, but then the pastor keeps them in the camps. As we've seen in most African countries, it tends to keep them in the camps. Do you think the pastors should bear some sort of responsibility if somebody comes to them and they're not able to detect that this person have some sort of help, needs some sort of mental or medical help?
As I said earlier on, the pastor is only after their money. The pastor is not a qualified person to deal with mental health. Even the conventional churches like the Catholic, Methodist, Anglican, and all those types of churches, the ministers have been trained in counseling, so they can deal with the issues, but they don't keep people in the church. So when you look back, when you notice that it's only the pastors, who have maybe 2 or 3 weeks training as pastors, and then they've given themselves all these big positions and titles that it's kind of deceiving to the public. When they hear these big titles, they think it's somebody who's so learned and have spent years and years looking into these issues, so they're going to go to this person for help. And it's only when they're there after a while that they realize that they're in the wrong place, because the person they've come to for help doesn't even have the skills, the experience, sometimes not even the knowledge of mental health to help them. By that time, they have spent so much money, they've become even poorer than they were, and then they want to leave.
Does having mental health problem mean that you're mad?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I don't even know what they mean by you're mad, because we do have schizophrenia where people become so psychotic that they kind of strip and walk in the street. That's because they're psychotic. But with treatment, you find that even they can manage their day-to-day living. And, you know, if you teach them how to spot their symptoms when they are relapsing, they're able to do so. And some of them will actually call you and tell you, you know, I think I'm relapsing. And they always know that when they stop taking their medication, that's an indication that they're going to relapse. So if you want to say mad, that's when they become very, very psychotic and start stripping. But mental health is not madness, because you know, you could be experiencing mental health when you lose someone to death, when you lose it's usually when you're under extreme stress, and the stresses are the ones that are going to make you behave differently from others, and others are going to see you as being different and behaving differently, and that's going to lead to the identification of mental health problem. So I wouldn't say mad as such, because there's so many different circumstances under which one will become so stressed that they start behaving differently, and that doesn't equate madness.
Well, the reason why I asked that question, because as I said, that it's only recently that I was educated on mental health. Somebody who is dealing with mental health, especially here, it is there. The help is there. You can go and seek help. But with regards to Africa, I don't think it's so much there in terms of research going into this. So recently, when I traveled back home, I realized, because as you were saying, the person had this anxiety at every given moment, and then they would just get up and go somewhere. They would just get up and go somewhere. Then I realized, I said to the person, why do you keep getting up? And they kept saying, I keep feeling anxious for no reason. So then I said to the person, look, I think you need to go to the doctors. He said to me, listen, I've been to church, I've spoken to the pastor. The pastor's been telling me to come in to drink some sort of, to drink this water, it will calm me down. So then, if I could ask you, Gillian, I don't know how you were educated on this issue, but then how were you able to realize that, look, actually, there are people that have anxiety or have different types of mental issue, not at the extreme level, but at the lower end, but still need help, and you can communicate to them, or you can see that, look, the way they're acting is not something that could be taken lightly.
So mine has actually come from personal experiences. So university can actually just make your mind go somewhere else. Like uni is a very, very stressful time.
Please speak up.
Uni is a very, very stressful time. So when I was in university, in my second year of university, I suffered from bad anxiety, and I never really knew what it was, but because I've always been, so I dance and I've always been doing shows, and like you were saying, like I have that like stage anxiety which happens before you're about to perform, maybe like a few hours before, and then afterwards like you're just elated, you feel good, it's nothing, you feel fine. But then when I was in my second year of university, it's kind of like even before deadlines and everything, like I was just getting this anxiety again and again and again. And then for me, things kind of like took a turn when I got saved, and then it was just kind of like I was fine after. Like I put all my faith in God and I was fine. But then obviously after a while, and now like I'm running my own business, I started having anxiety again, and I was just like, oh, this thing is back again. So I'm fortunate enough that one of my pastors, she's actually a psychiatrist or psychologist, I can't actually tell the difference, but she's one of those people. So a lot of the times when she's doing her sermons and stuff, like she'll speak about these things, and I've obviously like spoken to I've actually watched like quite a few videos on YouTube because I spend my time doing those things and like just heard from other people's experiences. But if I got to the stage where I felt like I couldn't like handle this myself, then I would definitely go to the doctors or something. But what I definitely always do is I speak to people who are currently in university and let them know that if you start acting in a way that you don't recognize, if you randomly start crying, if you're going to the toilet all the time, if you're always feeling panicky, like your heart feels unsettled, like you need to do something about it. Don't be scared to apply for an extension at university, because maybe you can't make the deadline because you're not mentally in the right place, and then you'll get a grade that you're unhappy with because you were trying to do it like everyone else was, but you were actually going through something. Because universities, they recognize anxiety, they recognize I think it's like something like situational anxiety, so it's brought on by a specific situation, and it happens to a lot of people. And that's why I'm always telling people that are in uni that you need to watch out for these things, so they can happen. Because I was watching a documentary, I think a few weeks ago, and it was something, I can't remember the number, but there was a lot of people who had committed suicide in university where the stress gets too much, and then they do these kind of things. And that's why you need to like stop it at the early stages, when it's just anxiety. People are anxious, they have had this situational anxiety that comes and goes, to now people are having continual anxiety that's moved to depression. I'm no expert in mental health, and like I said, it was just from my own personal experience that I was able to talk to other people.
I mean, it's interesting because sometimes it's best to talk to people who have experienced it. And in your case, I wanted to know, when you saying that when you got saved, that's when things turned around for you. How did you realize? What did you know? How did you know that, okay, after getting saved, now this is gone? Because you said later on you realized that it's coming back.
Yeah, so I think it's always nice when you're like a young Christian, just like in your faith, like you have your whole bunch of friends. And at university I was in like a Christian fellowship as well, so it was just like all of those things, and I was just on fire, like, yeah, this is so good. And we were praying all the time, and it was great. And even then, sometimes obviously like your life kind of starts to overwhelm you. You can't, and especially when you're not in university anymore, you don't have time to just be doing what you want every single time. Like, you actually have things to do. So I would say when I got saved, the reason I realized it is, like I said, like I wouldn't just randomly like be crying, or like I used to all the time, like my heart would just start beating fast, and I was like, what's going on? And then because anxiety can just pop up in you at the randomest times. I remember when I first noticed that, like I felt like I was getting anxious again, I was just watching a program, and I was just eating dinner, and then my heart started acting a bit weird, and I was thinking, like, I know my mind is thinking about something that my body doesn't want to process yet. And it's just like when I start feeling that way internally, that's when I know, okay, do you know what, this thing is coming back. And for me, the things that I was able to do to help myself out of that situation was because I'd literally been running on empty. I would sleep for like 4 hours, 3 hours. I'd be like, yeah, it's fine, it's cool, let's keep going. And then I randomly opened my phone, and Apple said that adults are meant to sleep for something between 7 and 8 hours. And I was just like, I've never slept for 8 hours before.
It's funny you touched on sleep, because the last time we spoke, Doctor, you touched on the importance of sleeping.
8 hours minimum, yeah.
8 hours minimum.
Because, as I said to you...
Oh, maximum.
No, I'm saying that's my maximum. That's my maximum. It's so
well,
minimum.
At least, so that would be minimum. Yeah, I tell people that the cheapest and the best kind of...
remedy, so to speak,
that God gave us and doesn't cost anything is sleep. Because when you sleep, your body is so relaxed, and your immune system is kind of recycling and getting rid of all the toxins and everything else that is bad in your system, and then refreshing everything. So by the time you wake up after 8 hours, it's like born again, and you're starting all over again. But if you're not sleeping, you still have all those little bits and pieces, the toxins, if it's winter time, all those things that's been going through your nose and your mouth and all of that. I can tell you're itching
because you don't get 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I don't. But the thing is, especially you've got a lot of people here who got family back home, and they're trying so hard to support their family back home, or they have businesses, because now we're living in a world where everything's 24/7, and you need to, if as a young entrepreneur yourself, I'm sure you don't get that 8 hours sleep.
No, I actually have to now.
You have to,
because I can't kill myself to make my dreams happen.
I make myself to have more than 8 hours sleep.
Sometimes now I get between.
I very rarely go to my doctor.
Really?
My children, I've kind of raised them to sleep, so they don't go
Doctor,
to
in African setting, if you have somebody that enjoys the sleep, you're deemed as being lazy. You don't want to work, you don't want to do anything.
That's the cultural thing, isn't it? We've seen people having a rest as lazy,
yeah.
Whereas it's all to do with the lack of knowledge about mental health. Yeah. This is what I was talking about last time. We need to raise awareness of mental health. Mental health mean when you are in good mental health. When the good mental health kind of leaves you, you become mentally ill. So that's the difference between mental health and mental illness. When you have the health, like we're talking now, that we're all sane or we think we're sane, that's good mental health. When good mental health turns bad, it becomes mental illness. There is no knowledge about mental health in Ghana. And if you were to say to someone, I think you need to see a doctor, they'll see it as an insult.
Yeah.
They become very, very offended, and you even have to apologize. And yet I'll be speaking as a professional. I've seen it and I've assessed it, in my own way, and I think that you ought to be seen by a professional person. But if I approach you and tell you, you see it differently. Another reason why people who are in a position to be able to help people experiencing mental health cannot get on is because of lack of social support, because our culture itself doesn't allow people to admit to mental health. Our culture doesn't allow us to see that mental health exists, and therefore if you as much as say, oh look, I'm a counselor, I think you've got a mental health problem and you need to go and see a counselor, the society itself doesn't support it, and therefore you accepting this offer and going to see a counselor or a psychiatrist, accepting it, you're also going to be faced with this discrimination and prejudice, which is stigma. And therefore the society itself is stopping us, or stopping Africa, from acknowledging that there is such a thing as mental health or mental illness. In Ghana they don't admit to mental illness.
Can you explain one thing to me, this difference between mental health and mental illness?
Mental illness,
explain that?
With the mental illness, we have the schizophrenias, we have the clinical depression, because you can be depressed without being clinically depressed.
Okay.
When you're clinically depressed, you have major depression, then you need treatment. But you can be depressed because you have an interview coming in 2 weeks' time and you become so anxious and you peeing every 5 minutes.
That's normal.
That's normal.
Okay.
Once that interview is taking place, or once that audition is taking place, it's gone. But where it continues and it festers and festers and festers and it's becoming even worse, you can't sit still and all these things, that's when mental illness sets in, because then the normal has given way to the abnormal. So we have the schizophrenias, we have the depressions, we have the bipolar affective disorders, and all these things, the manias and hypomanias, that are the mental illness when the good mental health has left you and you've become mentally ill.
Now, a lot of people tend to keep things to themselves when they're going through these challenges. I can testify to that, where I've had issues where I haven't spoken to anybody about it. Within the African setting, yet again, we have this thing where sharing or talking to people about problems that you're facing is more or less a taboo, because you don't want people talking about your businesses, and that in itself can have an effect on you,
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say that, so that's 100% true, that a lot of the times when people even do decide to speak up, it's just like, keep your problems to yourself, don't really say anything. And I always try and push that the people who want to care will be there. Like at my event tomorrow, the people who care about mental health, who care about mental health in Africa, they will be there. And sometimes you just actually have to focus on affecting the people who want to listen, rather than saying, okay, I'm trying to make a social change, I want everyone to hear what I want to say. Some people just want to play video games and live their life to a very superficial level. And once, unfortunately, they get to that stage where they need that help, then they will come looking for it. So one of the panelists that I have tomorrow, his name is Mr. Exposed on Twitter, Keith Ndube. He made a documentary with BBC Three. It's called Being Black, Going Crazy. He spoke about his own mental health issues that he'd had. So he was suffering from depression, and he's like a guy on Twitter, like a lot of people follow him even. He's always just tweeting like really, really funny things, and you would never know that this is actually going on behind the scenes in someone's life. And he came out and did that documentary, and that was like an eye-opener for a lot of people, and especially because of the platform he has, a lot of young people watch that documentary, and they know about the documentary. So as many people as like even me sitting here talking about the fact that, I was at uni, I had anxiety, those kind of things can really help people move along. So it's just about coming out, sharing your story, and just being willing to talk to people who want to listen. And if people who they don't want to listen, it's not that we have to keep pressing the issue and keep pressing the issue. The people who care they'll be there front and center, and that's why this event is so aimed at the African diaspora, because especially right now, Christmas time, a lot of people are going to be flocking to Ghana. Afterwards, who knows, they might decide to have jobs there, they might decide to start businesses there, and just like, we can't get involved on the continent just to make profit and not want to impact social change at the same time.
Okay, let's take a few messages on Facebook. This is from Joyce. Joyce is saying, most Africans believe mental illness is spiritual. That's ignorance. Doctors, bishops, archbishops, we black need to wake up. Mental illness can happen to anybody. Stress, anxiety, ADHD, are all mental illness. Okay, keep your thoughts, comments coming in. You're listening and watching Talk Africa. We're taking another break. When we come back, we will continue with our discussion. We'll be right back.
But
This program is brought to you by Pay Global.
I love social media. I mean, I am social media. So I've decided I'm going to hijack your screens for the next 60 minutes as we surf through your Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, and all of it. The key is to listen, engage, and build relationships. Social media is not just any media. It means fun and connecting to your favorite personalities online from any part of the globe. And when I say fun, I mean real fun. FNN Social.
Are you doing something illegal in there?
No. What? Your lesbian fixation? Huh? You call that a lesbian fixation? It is happening live. I am just coming from their room.
Rama, this cannot continue. We cannot continue hiding our true feelings.
Hey, why are you locking the door?
He who carries the load knows his weight.
So what do we do now?
We bang on the door till she opens it.
What the hell is going on? We just came out of that room and what we saw there didn't even come close to two women.
You know, sometimes the trap doesn't catch the prey you set it for.
Why Solombi? These girls are becoming troublesome.
Are we supposed to tell our clients to wait so we go buy shampoo? We deliver to our clients irrespective of our challenges.
I shall be back. You won't get rid of me so easily.
Welcome to another edition of Switch HQ. That's right, my name is Ludwig Jr. and from now on you're going to see my shows coming to you straight from London exclusively. What, Roy? You're going to be seeing events from here, you're going to be seeing interviews.
Happy birthday, movies.
I think God listens to me a lot.
I'm good, thank you.
Exclusively.
Please, dear, first thing, keep watching Swish.
What if it is entertained? This is the Met they added to his Swiss HQ about Bob.
Hello, my name is Dorothy, Miss Face of Ghana UK 2016. And I'm Sharon Rose.
This is Mimi. I came to blah, 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 blah.
This is Ghana, man, so we're representing.
Swiss HQ, we say.
I'm just going to be in the crowd.
How are you already know? My name is SARKODIE, aka you know what time it is, aka Money No Problem, aka what else? Now stand up. You're watching Switch HQ. Woo!
This program is brought to you by Pay Global.
Welcome back to Talk Africa with me, Jones. Well, if you're just joining us today, we're talking about the stigmatization of mental health within the Afro-Caribbean communities. I've been saying it and I'll say it again, such as myself. It was only recently I was educated on mental health. We've been brought up, well, I've been brought up as not really showing emotions. If there's anything that you need to do, you just get up and get on with it. If I wanted to sleep, I was deemed as being lazy. But then, as I've been educated, and also by Dr. Maddie here with us this morning, sleep is very, very important. So if you've got any businesses back home, or if you're supposed to come here and take some money back home, there's a lot of pressure on you. You need to think about your mental state, okay? You really, really need to think about your mental state. But yesterday, we went out to speak to a lot of people yesterday. We were able to speak to a young man who had mental health issue. He didn't want to be filmed, but he was willing to tell us his story. Let's listen to what he had to say.
A victim of torture and a survivor of violence back home. I come from the Great Lakes region in East Africa. I've been here for 15 years. And well, I wouldn't say I suffer, because back home in Africa, to be even diagnosed with anything health-wise, and when it goes mental, is a curse, is a taboo, is looked at as a madman. And I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder due to what I went through. And at that time, 2013, it was kind of very strange. I didn't know I suffered stress. I didn't know I suffered depression. I didn't know that even I had mental health concerns and issues. I was having terrible, terrible nightmares. I would forget things quite easily. Loss of memory, loss of concentration, lack of routine. I have no interest in life, suicidal feelings, and I really felt I really didn't feel myself anymore. But the biggest scare came when one thing that stood with me, when I was referred to St. Anne's Hospital to see a psychiatric doctor. That really sent me worried. And actually, when I went there, I never told them the right symptoms I had. And because I knew if I did, I was going to be admitted. And again, the report didn't come out supporting. But I wasn't aware that the discussion I was going to have was going to help me. Thankfully, I have a very good relationship with my doctor at the Pavilion Clinic. We're in Brixton, which is a refugee clinic. And I have got a good relationship with the therapeutical team. I've been going for counseling for 4 years, from 2013 until now. And those tools in the community have helped me to be able to deal with my condition and not to see myself as totally disabled, but seeking help, and knowing that I'm not alone in this struggle, knowing that this is something that can happen to anybody at any time. But how do we deal with it when we come from our regions, from our beliefs, where anything to do with mental is a curse, is related with witchcraft, is related with family issues, and is not on the health aspect of improving people's well-being. And again, when you know, or if you are told, if you are how do you deal with it? Whom do you talk to? How do you take it on yourself?
So when you were told about your mental state, did you speak to any of your family members? Did you speak to any friends, and how did they receive it?
No, really, I had friends. I don't have any family member in Britain, but a few friends who know me. This is almost bringing tears. I'm sorry. A few of my friends who knew that I go for a support group, they said, "Oh, we hear Michael went mad." So it's a message of judgment. Yeah.
That was the man I spoke to yesterday. He didn't want to be filmed, but he was willing to share his story. And as you saw that we had to stop filming because he broke down. And again, it just hit right home to me as to how you can see the man, because before I approached him to talk to him, he's quite tall, he looks strong. But then speaking to him, I just realized how fragile he was. Listening to that, anyway, what did you make of what we just played?
I think it's definitely good that you guys have been like speaking to people and getting their real life perspectives. And even when you were saying to us obviously before that he was like in a rush, and then you were like, no, like this is about this topic. It's very good that the person stopped and said, I want to share my story. Even if he obviously couldn't continue because of getting too emotional, like I was saying, it's so powerful when people share their story. But it's just obviously it's very disappointing for people to say that he's gone mad, especially because, like you were saying, there is really no thing as mad. Because even if you become severely schizophrenic, then you're just gonna be you'll be diagnosed as clinically insane. There's no thing as going mad. It's even just a derogatory term just to bring people down. So even those people who said those things to them, that's when at the end of the day you find out who your real friends are. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise that those people have left his life now.
And the good thing, speaking to him after, he's actually gotten himself involved in workshops. He holds workshops with other people in similar predicaments, so he's not alone. So he doesn't feel alone. So he does a lot of good work within the local communities. But listening to somebody like Michael, if you have been diagnosed and this is what you're faced with, if you go to friends and families and this is the type of reception that you're receiving, what do you need to do? What can one do, Doctor?
I said last week that you need to have one or two people that you can really confide in and trust, because this is about trust as well. If I don't trust you, I can't tell you things that will help me. And what he just shared actually is very cathartic, because he's going to make him feel better afterwards. He may not realize it there and then, but when he's gone home later on and maybe the next day, he realizes how very refreshing it is for him to talk about it. So that's also very beneficial for him. But I made a few lists here of how to cope with stigma, like what he was talking about. And I have about 3 or 4 or 5 things. Some of it he's already doing, but it says seek help, so that you don't allow the fear of being labeled, because people are afraid that they're labeled as being mad, and therefore they don't want to go forward and get treatment. But you seek help, and once you've got help, then the treatment will be identified and you'll be able to be your normal self. Also, don't allow the stigma, what people think about you, create self-doubt for yourself, so that don't feel ashamed or embarrassed. Seek counseling, educate yourself with mental health, educate yourself with mental illness. Try and work out your own symptoms, your signs of relapsing, and what you can do to offset that, so that you'll be able to contact somebody when you think you're going to relapse. Like you notice that your anxiety was coming back, so you knew what to do, so that you don't give up, you constantly managing it. Then we have, I said, do not isolate yourself. Don't stick to yourself, and just shutting yourself away in your room, going from work to your room and not talking to anybody at all. You need to speak to members of family and to your minister and to some close friends that you can trust, and so that the compassion and the support that they give to you will also help you to understand your problem and help you in that respect. Do not describe yourself as an illness. Some people say, oh, I'm schizophrenic or I'm bipolar. You're not bipolar, you're not schizophrenic. You're suffering from bipolar affective disorder. You're suffering from schizophrenia, you're not schizophrenia. And so don't kind of describe yourself as the disorder. And then you need to join a support group. That young man is a member of support group, and if you talk to the people who have the same things as yourself, then you understand and you know that you're not on your own. Problem shared is problem halved.
So communication is key.
It's important.
Okay, now Gillian earlier on was talking about her anxieties in at the time at uni, and before, when we were on the break, you touched on university being a breeding ground.
Universities are a breeding ground for mental health, and it is very well known. And this is why a lot of countries, except Ghana, and I keep saying this because it's something that I actually started wanting to do that research in the University of Cape Coast, and I got all the proposals and everything else. Everything else has been accepted by the council and the research board. It's just that things haven't happened as they usually do in Ghana. But every country has gone into research, into looking at universities and mental health. And before you go to university, you've lived with your parents all your life. Or even if you haven't lived with your parents, you've lived on your own on your life. And then and suddenly you go to university where everything is organized, everything is structured. You need to follow the structure. You have to get up at a certain time, go to lectures, finish at a certain time. You have to revise. You have to do your exams at a certain time. And everything is structured, which is not the same as when you were at home with your parents. For the first time also, you are managing your own finances. You're managing your own life. It's like you're looking after yourself. What your parents were doing for you, you're doing it yourself. And so the whole thing becomes like a real big burden that has suddenly descended upon you, and trying to deal with that stress that it is creating in you alongside the stresses of studying itself, because studying itself is stressful, and adding the stresses of being in the university campus and looking after yourself, managing your finances, making new friends, sharing hostels with people you've never met before, and the different behaviors that you encounter, all of these together, get students, about 50% of students have mental illness between the first, second, and third year. It's not, because they come there deliberately to go mad, but the stresses that they kind of encounter in the universities lend itself to all these mental health issues.
You've touched on stresses, especially Africans or Caribbeans living in diaspora. A lot of people that, in terms of their residency, immigration issues, can that in itself also attribute?
Immigration has always been known to kind of contribute to mental illness. If you read my book, it tells you immigration contributes to mental illness. You've come to a country that is alien to you. The cultures, of the people in the country is different from the culture that you left at home. Maybe something happened at home before you even left. You came because there was war in Africa and you left. So straight away, the war has actually put you in a situation of PTSD. So you're already suffering from a post-traumatic stress disorder from that war before you came to England. And then you come to England and you find that the culture here is alien to what you know in your own country. So the two things together are going to put extreme stress on you. And as a human being, you're going to break down. And that's the beginning of mental illness. There's been lots and lots of research into migration, immigration, and mental health, and the result is astronomical. Everywhere you look, migration and immigration, they all contribute to mental illness. And so it's not surprising that people who travel from other countries to come and live, and if you come and you're studying as well, that makes matters even worse, because you've traveled from your own country to a different culture. Then you're studying, taking over, worrying about your finances, your hostel accommodation, the people you meet, the people you mix with, the new friends you make, and having to learn the different way of their behaviors and get used to them, and all those things. It just culminates into mental illness.
Okay, now before we go, you've got your event coming up tomorrow. It's called Africa on the Rise on Mental Health. Just tell us a bit about it, who's going to be part of the panelists, and what will be, what else are you going to talk about?
So it's a panel discussion about the role of the diaspora in challenging the stigma of mental health in Africa. So we have 4 panelists. One is Miss Ghana UK 2017, Sabina. We have another girl, her name is Tomilola. She recently did a production in central London about mental health in the Black community, and she runs her own platform, and she recently wrote a story for us on a blog post called The Hippocratic Oath. So if you check out the Hippocratic Post, you'll see her article there. We also have, like I said, Mr. Exposed, who will be doing, his name's Keith Dubé. He will be one of the panelists, and Emmanuel Speaks. He is a phenomenal poet, and he will be there on. He'll be a panelist on the day, and you can also check his work out on YouTube. He has a new like short film series called The Composer, which is kind of just navigating like, I guess, like the life of a young person. And I would just say as well, I guess, if I can like touch on what you were saying about university, I think I definitely agree with the idea of obviously you're meeting new people, but I think I would disagree with the idea that it's structured. And I think the reason people fall into such a pit is because of how unstructured university is. Like sometimes we'll go to bed at like 4 a.m. and then you'll still wake up and go to your lecture, or you just won't go to your lecture because they don't take registers. No one cares if you turn up to your lecture or not. Student finance are putting all of this money into your account, and you've never known what to do with money before in your life. People will just blow it all, do random things. They want to live expensive lifestyles.
But then is that not the responsibility of a young adult?
Yeah, no, I'm saying as in university. So
the university, the university itself is structured, but the young person doesn't take notice of the structure. They want to live.
I don't know. I'm saying from my experience, like I don't know what your experience was like. I literally just graduated from university. When you go in, you could stay in your student accommodation every single day. You would not have to go to your lectures. No one's going to chase you up. But when you were in secondary school, if you didn't go, they would call your parents. If you didn't do your homework, they would call your parents. They would write in your planner. There was actually people who were making sure that not only were you being responsible in school, you're also being responsible outside.
Yeah, that's what I meant. When you go to university, you're on your own. So now nobody's checking you. You have to check yourself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like there's no structure. That's why people lose their minds.
The structure is that you have to be at lecture at a certain time, 1 hour or 2 hours, and then from there you have about another half an hour break. Then you go to a second lecture and all that. If the student doesn't turn up, it's the student that is not taking notice of the structures of the university.
Yeah.
The university has its structure. The lessons and they are all booked and scheduled, and lecture halls have been identified for those.
That's
if you don't turn up, no one is going to check on you because you're not with your parents who push you.
That's what I mean. I feel like it's no different to secondary school.
So it's not the university. It's the student that is not taking notice of.
Okay, quickly, Dr. Emma, before we move on, you've written the book. Just tell us briefly about the book and where people can purchase it. And this is to do with mental health.
The book is to do with mental health and specifically severe personality disorder. About 70 or 80% of us have a personality disorder of some sort. Some are pronounced, others are not. This book will tell you all you need to know about mental health per se, mental illness per se, and also will raise your awareness on how to identify someone with a personality disorder who might not be a friend to you, because when somebody's got a personality disorder, they're very controlling, and they may be doing things that you may not like. But if you know that this is what they're suffering from, then you know how to manage it and not upset yourself.
And where can people purchase it?
People can call me at the moment and buy it from me.
Okay. If you call into the studio, we will get you in contact with Dr. Madi. And also online, they can get it online?
Online, yes. Amazon.
Okay. And Gillian, with regards to your show, your event tomorrow, where is it taking place and how can people find information about it?
The Africa Centre Southwark. So if you just go onto Eventbrite and type in Africa on the Rise, it'll come up, it'll say the 4th edition of Africa on the Rise. You can buy your tickets there, and all the information will be on Eventbrite. And you can follow Akua Hazel, so the name that comes up when it says founder. You can follow Akua Hazel on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for coming in this morning. Dr. Emma Madi and Gillian Asafo. AJ, thank you both for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having us.
We've come to the end of the show. It's been very, very insightful this morning. If you're not aware with regards to mental health issue, make sure you do seek help. If you know somebody that you think might need help, make sure to talk to them. We'll do it again, same place, same time tomorrow. Until then, be safe and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
This program is brought to you by Pay Global.